Hey there, Tom Gibson from New EdTech Classroom here, sharing some thoughts on student jobs in the classroom and a classroom economy. I experimented with student jobs and classroom economies for 7 years, primarily in the 5th grade through 8th grade grade levels, and have a few things to say on it. But I do want to let you know that I have a free online course all about how I structure my student jobs and what student jobs I have in the classroom at newedtechclassroom.com/student jobs. But onto the questions. What are the benefits of having student classroom jobs? I think having student jobs empowers your students. It gives them a role in the classroom. It gives them an opportunity to actually be of service to the greater community outside of themselves. And the more you can give them jobs that they actually want to do, the better, and the more empowered they will be. And the more that your jobs are actual things that need to be done in the classroom, actual tasks that take something off of your plate as the teacher, all the better, because then the student really sees like, oh, this is actually helping my teacher by maybe writing the agenda up on the board for them at the beginning of the day or something like that. How do you manage your classroom jobs? I would say the biggest thing is having checklists. There's a book called The Checklist Manifesto by a neurosurgeon named Atul Gawande. And the whole premise of the book is that if you want to diminish errors during surgery, you need to go through checklists. So if neurosurgeons need checklists, then our students will need checklists as well. So I always create checklists. Sometimes they're in the form of a screencast that the student has to watch to see what they need to do and step by step. But I have one job that is the job to oversee all the jobs. It's a teacher assistant job, and they have a big checklist of who does what job when, and every class begins with the teacher assistant starting to go through some of those jobs, and every class ends with the teacher assistant going through some of those jobs, because some jobs happen at the beginning and some jobs happen at the end. And as far as giving same salary or different salary, if you're doing a full-on classroom economy, I think that jobs that require a lot more responsibility and a lot more things that the student has to do should be paid higher than jobs that maybe are not as time intensive or not necessarily needing as much responsibility. I try to have a wide range of jobs. So I have even had jobs where a student's job was to come in and open the blinds. It was something that needed to be done, but it was a pretty low lift job for maybe a student that wasn't as interested in all the other jobs. They're just like, well, what job can I do? That'll be pretty easy for me. But that job would pay the lowest than all the other jobs in my classroom. What were yours and some of your students' favorite classroom jobs? I would say the class podcaster. That was one that I implemented later in my teaching career. It actually started with remote teaching, but I continued it even after remote teaching when we were full in person, where it was the job of one student or a couple of students to create a 3-minute podcast that was sort of served as almost the newsletter of our classroom for that month. And the students that applied for this job and got it, one of the students, they ended up writing their own intro and outro music in GarageBand. They came up with their own segments like the mathematician of the month or the math riddle of the month, where they went around and one of them, they wanted to interview other math teachers at the school and what kind of math they loved the most. And so I liked that one a lot, because I had some classes where it was the students that you kind of expected them to apply for that job because they were the gregarious class clown types and really liked attention. But I also had some of my most introverted students apply and do a really great job on the podcast, and so it was a way of getting their voices in the classroom as well. What are some common concerns? So some teachers find classroom jobs consuming and feel that they are extra work. What tips do you have for these teachers? I would say make a list of all the things that you have to do as a teacher, regardless of how much you think a student could do this. Just like all the things that you have to do. Well, when I come in, I have to like plug my computer and pull up the class website. I have to communicate with parents every week or every month about what we're doing in the classroom. I have to meet with students. I have to answer teacher emails. I have to update my grade book. I have to create graphics for the learning management system, whatever it is. And then on that list, once you've made a huge list, list, I want you to think through. I do this actually in presentations with teachers where we do this, make this list together, and then I have them go in and rate those jobs, those tasks, those teacher tasks from one star, meaning only a teacher could do this task, all the way to 5-star, where it would be so easy for a student to do this task. And so your first job in trying to make class jobs less daunting and less of another thing for you to do is try to look at those 5-star, those 4-star, and then maybe even some of those 3-star and those 2-star jobs, and think through, how could I delegate this to a student? And then the more that your class jobs are actual teacher tasks that are delegated to your students, the less it becomes about like another thing for you to do, but now things are actually being taken off of your plate. And having those checklists and everything ensure that your students actually are doing it to the standards that you want them to do. Some teachers think of classroom jobs as only relevant to elementary school, and as a middle school teacher, what would you say to those teachers, and what tips do you have for middle school and high school teachers? I would say that students as they get older are capable of more responsibility, and so we shouldn't be giving them less responsibility when they get to middle school and high school. The challenge is coming up with a classroom job when you are a middle school and high school teacher, in that you have so many more students. But in the course, I kind of walk through how you can systemize that and have students apply for their top jobs, and making sure that, like, you know, the jobs that you really need someone to have in your classroom to get your job done and make your job easier. Those will be the top priority ones that you hire out for. But the biggest thing is, like, our students are capable of more responsibility, more complex tasks, and so we should be giving them more responsibility and more complex tasks when it comes to taking ownership of their classroom. So the class job list that I share in my course is not like line leader or things like that you would typically see in an elementary school, but it's been adapted for more modern and more useful jobs, I think, than maybe some of the traditional elementary school jobs. Once assigning classroom jobs, some teachers struggle to monitor student tasks and make sure that the jobs are getting done. What advice do you have on managing classroom jobs to ensure that students are fulfilling their roles? Again, having a student that is the teacher assistant is really great for this one. But I also, in my classroom, I had a fine that students had to pay, where if they did not do their job to the appropriate level of what I expected of them, or if they just completely forgot to do their job, they would get fined. And so how much of a fine you want to do is up to you, but that is kind of a negative reinforcement for them to not do their job. But then having those systems built in where one student has that checklist, and if that student's absent, then I have that checklist and I can easily go through, and I don't have to remember who does what job when, but it says, oh, Monday beginning of class, this person does their job. Monday after class, this person does their job, or something like that. So I think having those systems in place is what's the best way of monitoring it. And general advice for teachers who want to use classroom jobs, common concerns I've missed, and additional thoughts I'd like to share. I would start with classroom jobs before you get into a classroom economy, just because finding the best way to kind of get the jobs done and having students even like kind of buy into it just for the sake of having jobs, I think is a easier step into the world of classroom jobs and classroom economies. Because I did classroom jobs for several years until I finally implemented a classroom economy portion to it, where students actually got paid in classroom money for their jobs, and then they could do stuff. They could buy things in a class store, or participate in a classroom auction, or pay rent, pay fines, or pay rent with their money on their desk, and things like that. But once you incorporate the money thing, it can become a lot bigger of a thing to manage. So start with the jobs, and then when you're ready to incorporate things like the actual salaries in classroom economy, then a tool like Class Equity is going to be able to help you manage all of those things and give students a very real interface of like an online checking account, so they can see their money and their balances and the deposits and the withdrawals and things like that. So again, if you'd like to check out that free course, it is newedtechclassroom.com/student-jobs, and I show you all of my classroom jobs and how I implement them into the classroom. That course doesn't get into the classroom economy aspects of it, but if you're wanting to dip your toes into class jobs, it's a good place to start.